1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us. And
Yes, you do have quorum, and it is past 6. Anytime you're ready.
For Councillor Dominato, I thought I saw on there as well at one point. Here now, though. Okay, great. So I'm going to call this public hearing to order. And are we live, clerks? Yep, we're live.
Yes.
Okay. So to call the public hearing of July 28th to order. This meeting is convened by electronic means, and as such, council members may participate in person or by electronic means. Council, you need to leave your videos on to enable to confirm quorum. And if your video is disabled, you'll be marked absent for that portion of the meeting. Members of the public can view the proceedings via the live stream and YouTube link, which will be tweeted out at Van City Clerk. The handle is at Van City Clerk. I want to acknowledge we're in the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and with delight being Arlene Thomas today at the Evelyn Saller opening. And we thank them for having care for this land and look forward to working with them in partnership as we continue to build this great city together. Thanks to staff for everything you're doing as well. Can we have a roll call, please, Clerk?
Yes, Mayor Stewart in the chair. Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor DeGenova. Councillor Fry has leave of absence for personal reasons, 6 p.m. onwards. Councillor Swanson.
Here.
Councillor Hardwick.
Present.
Councillor Wiebe.
Present.
Councillor Boyle.
Present.
Councillor Dominato. Councillor Bly. Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Present.
The hearing has quorum, Mayor Stewart.
Thank you very much, clerks. Just before we begin, just a reminder, the public may participate by phone, speaking in person, or submitting written comments to council, and you have 5 minutes to make your comments. Speakers may only speak once and should be follow along on Twitter at Van City Clerk for updates, or you can send them online, vancouver.ca/public-hearing-comments. We want to make sure that everybody's treated fairly and respectfully, so the language we all use in public hearings should reflect respect for all residents, and no form of discrimination is acceptable or tolerated. Speakers who have pre-registered with presentations are reminded that the public live feed has a slight delay, so you'll have to say next and we'll help you through your slides. We also have a long-standing commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and so just to remind council that we don't use gendered honorifics when we're addressing people. Our role tonight is to be a quasi-judicial body, which means council is only to consider the merits of the rezoning application, and then we can approve, we can refuse, or we can refer the application to staff for further consideration. So item 1 is miscellaneous amendments concerning various CD1 bylaws. I'll just ask first if members wish to declare a conflict of interest. If not, I'll ask the clerk to read the application and summary of correspondence.
It is an application by the General Manager of Planning, Urban Design Sustainability to make miscellaneous amendments to CD1 at 720 BT Street and 701 Expo Boulevard and CD1 at 1396 Richard Street to improve clarity, update references, correct inafterent errors or omissions, and or improve the administration of the bylaws. No correspondence may receive on this application since referred to public hearing.
Thanks so much, Council. We don't have any speakers to this. But we do have Nicholas Danford from the Rezoning Center here to present the application, which is 2 slides. So we can't waive that though, if that's if no one objects.
Yeah, to waive.
Okay, I don't hear any objections, so we'll just move ahead with waiving the presentation. I'll just ask council if there's any questions for staff at this point. If so, please put yourself on the list.
Actually, Mayor, if it's only 2 slides, I actually would like to see it.
Okie doke. So we can have Nicholas Danford to show the 2 slides. That would be great.
Great. Good evening, Council. I was just going to bring up my slide. It's actually just 1 slide.
Okay.
Just confirming you can see the slide and you can hear me?
Yep.
Great. So thanks, Mayor. My name is Nick Danford, and I'm the rezoning planner for the item. So from time to time, Council considers miscellaneous text amendments to provide greater clarity in zoning bylaws to correct typographical errors or inadvertent errors and provide clear direction for the public and staff in the administration and interpretation of bylaws. This report recommends miscellaneous text amendments to 2 bylaws. So the first is CD1 818 for 720 Beatty Street and 701 Expo Boulevard. This was rezoned under the rezoning policy for the CBD and CBD shoulder and the Metro Core Jobs and Economy Land Use Plan and was enacted in June 2022. It's currently at the development permit phase. The zoning permits a 17-story office building and a 5-story entertainment pavilion with a total floor area of just over 61,600 square feet or 61,600 square meters or 663,000 square feet. As intended in the original bylaw, Section 7.2 permits the Director of Planning or the Development Permit Board to allow for incursions of functional building elements such as mechanical equipment to project into established view cones. This amendment corrects the maximum overall discretionary height in sub-area A, which contains the office building, to accurately reflect the form of development proposed at the time of original rezoning. This change does not affect the overall form of development that was proposed initially. The second is CD1 563 for 1396 Richard Street, which is formerly 1388 Richard Street. This bylaw was enacted in March of 2014, and the development is built and occupied. The bylaw permits a mixed-use development that includes 269 residential units, including 129 rental units and a childcare facility. The approved bylaw applies limitations on permitted uses on the ground floor commercial units. The amendment would remove a number of these limitations to accommodate a wider range of business types and support the viability of these commercial units. Any uses that are considered to be incompatible with the site would not be approved through the development permit or business licensing process, and the change does not affect the form of development that was approved by Council. So thanks, Council. That was my presentation, and of course, we're around to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions to staff on these this item? Please just put yourself on the queue. If not, we'll now hear from the public. There is nobody on the public list, so I'll just ask if you're called the first time. Then, if you're interested in this, 1-833-353-8610, code 1061445 #. Clerks, I'll ask you: is there anybody in the chambers or on the line for this item?
Having trouble with my microphone. No
Okay.
one coming forward in the chamber and no one on the line for this item.
Okay, great. And we'll then call a second time. And don't imagine there's anybody else, but just make my official second call. Anybody there?
And again, no one coming forwards. And as well, no one on the line for this item.
Great, thank you. So I'll call the third time, 1-833-353-8610, code 1061445 # to speak to this item. Council at 6:10. We're going to allow 5 minutes for folks just in case they want to call in, and we'll come back at 6:15 to complete this item.
We're ready.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to ask you, clerks, is there anybody there in the chambers or on the line to speak to this item?
No one coming forward for this item in the chamber, and I'm also getting a negative for on the line.
Thanks so much. So we're going to close the speakers list, and we're also going to close the list for public comments. And we're going to move, staff, any closing comments on this item?
No closing comments, thanks, Mayor.
Great. I see Councillor DeGenova. Questions to staff?
I was going to move adoption if there weren't any other questions.
There don't seem to be any, so thanks for that. Do we have a seconder?
Second, Councillor Carr.
Councillor Carr, I heard. So thanks. We're on the main queue now. If anybody'd like to speak to this item, please put yourself on the queue. If not, I will call a vote on this item. Just a reminder, your video has to be on in order to be eligible to vote. Otherwise, you'll be marked absent. Thanks. And clerks, you want to trigger the vote, please? Councillor Carr.
Can I get a vote assist in favor?
Okay, is your video on, Councillor Blind? Yes, you are.
Thank you.
Okay, clerk, can you
Mayor, sorry, I have my panel, sorry, point of privilege. I have my panel up, but it's not giving me the prompt to vote, so I will do a vote assist in favor.
Okay, it does have you marked as a favor. So, okay, so that has passed with unanimously. So thank you very much, Council, for that. And with that, we're going to move to the second item, which is CD1 rezoning on Stainsbury Avenue. This was originally heard on July 5th. I'm just wondering if any council member wishes to declare a conflict of interest on this item. If not, we'll have the clerk read the summary of the application and summary of correspondence.
There is an application by Public Architecture Plus Communication to rezone 2009 to 2037 Stamford Avenue from residential district to the CD1 district to permit the development of a 7-story residential building with 1 to 3 social housing units, a building height of 23.4 meters with additional height for rooftop mechanical appurtenances, and a floor space ratio of 3.53 are proposed. The General Manager of Sustainability, Planning, and Urban Design recommends approval, subject to conditions set out in the summary and recommendations of the public hearing agenda. The following correspondence has been received since referral to public hearing: 31 pieces of correspondence in support, 27 pieces of correspondence in opposition, and 13 pieces of correspondence dealing with other aspects of the application. This represents all correspondence received up to 5 p.m. today.
Thanks so much. We have Allison Smith here from the Rezoning Center with the presentation. We do have speakers to this, council, so I think we should proceed with the presentation. So if Allison Smith wants to proceed, please go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Allison Smith, and I'm the rezoning planner for this social housing application being considered under the Kensington Cedar Cottage Community Vision. The site is located at the northeast corner of Stainsbury Avenue and Victoria Drive, with frontages along Stainsbury Avenue, Victoria Drive, Hull Street, and the SkyTrain Guideway to the north. It comprises 5 city-owned parcels and is occupied by the Cedar Cottage Community Garden and 2 detached homes. The community garden occupies both a part of the city-owned properties and the SkyTrain Guideway. A small portion of a community garden shed located on the SkyTrain Guideway encroaches onto 2009 Stainsbury Avenue. At the time of rezoning application submission, there was 1 residential tenant on the site. The tenant was a former owner and has since vacated the property. The site is currently zoned RS1. Surrounding properties to the east are primarily zoned RS1 and contain detached dwellings and low-rise apartment buildings. A number of neighboring sites fronting onto Victoria Drive are zoned CD1 and are developed with 4 to 6-story apartment buildings. The site to the north, opposite the SkyTrain Guideway, is zoned CD1 and is under construction for 69 secured market rental housing units. This slide shows the development context of sites fronting onto Victoria Drive and the Victoria Diversion. and the number of stories of buildings on each site. As shown, buildings along this Artielo Road range from 4 to 6 stories. The property directly across Victoria Drive from the subject site is occupied by newer 6-story market rental buildings. Located within approximately 800 meters of several parks, bikeways, and community spaces, the property is near to many amenities. The site is also well served by transit, with Nanaimo Station within walking distance. The site is located within the catchment area of Lord Beaconsfield Elementary School and Gladstone Secondary School. The Kensington Cedar Cottage Community Vision permits consideration of rezoning for social housing projects without further planning study. In 2017, Council approved the Housing Vancouver strategy, which sets out targets and actions to retain a diversity of households and incomes in the city. The strategy targets 12,000 social, supportive, and nonprofit cooperative units and 20,000 purpose-built rental units. The rezoning application was submitted on December 3, 2021, representing a 7-month timeline to public hearing, in keeping with the short program target timelines. The application proposes to rezone the site from RS1 to CD1 to permit the development of a residential building containing 123 social housing units. The overall height is 6 stories along Stainsbury Avenue and Victoria Drive. Due to site slope,
Want to turn the AC back on?
an additional
Sorry,
lower...
Pardon me, point of privilege. I don't
I'm
think
going to stop you there, staff. Just Councillor Bly, I think I need you to mute your mic. Thanks so much. Please continue, staff.
Due to site slope, an additional lower level of units is provided at the rear of the site fronting the SkyTrain Guideway. This results in a 7-story massing when viewed from the SkyTrain Guideway and Hull Street. Staff recommend an FSR of 3.53 and a building height of 23.4 meters. The project is estimated to contribute approximately 194 construction jobs. The portion of the community garden the portion of the community garden currently occupying the subject site will have to be removed to facilitate the development of this social housing project. The proposal includes 46% family units, including 2, 3, and 4-bedroom units. The proposed form of development responds to overall project objectives, including enhanced livability, building sustainability, and climate resilience, while also enabling efficient modular construction. The courtyard form promotes resident interaction, passive cooling, and improved solar access for many units. The application proposes indoor and outdoor amenity spaces at grade, with additional opportunities for resident gathering and interaction within the courtyard. Driveway access is proposed from Hull Street. The 3 parcels at 2009 to 2021 Stainsbury Avenue were first acquired in the 1970s by the city to deliver an affordable housing project at this location. In 2018, Council approved the acquisition of 2 additional parcels at 2031 and 2037 Stainsbury Avenue to expand the development potential of the site. In the intervening years, the city signed a Memorandum of Cooperation, or MOC, with the City of Vienna, committing to sharing knowledge and advancing innovation on the development of low-carbon affordable housing. This site was selected to be the location of a demonstration project in recognition of the MOC. Both cities aim to develop a building named after its counterpart. As such, this project is named Vienna House and is pursuing Passive House certification. In June of 2020, More Than a Roof Housing Society was approved by Council to act as the nonprofit partner to finance, build, and operate the social housing building on the site. The project proposes to exceed the city's definition of social housing, which requires a minimum of 30% of units to be below housing income limits, or HILS, rental rates. The project has received provisional funding approval through BC Housing's Community Housing Fund, which requires the project to deliver 50% of units below HILS rates, 20% of units at rent geared to income deep subsidy rates, and 30% of units at market rents. The table on the slide shows the rental rate mix and the estimated rents and household income served for units within each rate category. The blue column shows the rents for the 20% of units categorized as rent geared to income deep subsidy units. The green column shows approximate rents for the 50% of units rented at below HILS rates, and the orange column demonstrates approximate market rents for the remaining 30% of units. These units are intended to be rented out at or below market rent for a similar unit in the community. A virtual open house was held this past winter. 247 pieces of correspondence were received. Support was expressed for the creation of new social housing at this location, for the proposed scale and design of the building, and for the sustainability aspects of the project. Respondents who supported the proposal noted that the height and density fits in with newer developments along Victoria Drive and is well located near to the SkyTrain and neighborhood parks. Elements of the project that were supported by some residents were of concerns for others. Concern was expressed for the proposed height and density in relation to the neighborhood and for overall development pressure in the area. Residents also expressed concern over the building design and livability for future residents. Some expressed concern over the amount of parking proposed, and others were opposed to the loss of the community garden on the site. In response to concerns, staff are of the opinion that the proposed building is compatible with the existing neighborhood and is in keeping with neighboring developments on Victoria Drive. The building provides an appropriate transition from Victoria Drive towards lower-scale residential forms to the east. In terms of concerns over the form of development and livability, Urban Design Conditions in Appendix B recommend exploring an increase in the width of the courtyard, maximizing solar access, and minimizing noise disturbance in the courtyard and for units facing the SkyTrain guideway. In relation to parking concerns, the project will be required to meet the parking bylaw. Staff acknowledged the concerns over the loss of the community garden, and the Garden Society will be able to continue to operate throughout this growing season. In terms of community amenities, staff acknowledge that many of our community centers and signature programming are generally well subscribed across the city. Staff are looking at strategies to meet demand across the portfolio, including expanding programming in existing community centers such as Trout Lake. In conclusion, the proposal can be considered under the Kensington Cedar Cottage Community Vision and advances the city's social housing targets under the Vancouver Housing Strategy. The proposal and form of development represents an appropriate urban design response to the site and context and represents a good model of sustainable, affordable housing. Staff support the application subject to the conditions contained in Appendix B. Staff and the applicant team are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time tonight and the presentation. I was going to ask if the applicant team is here to speak to the application.
We are. Thank you, Mayor Stewart.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. It'll just take me a moment to get set up. Good evening, Mayor Stewart and members of Council. My name is Heather Oland, and I am the Director of Non-Market Housing Development for the City of Vancouver. I am delighted to be here this evening to introduce the proposed social housing project at 2009 to 2037 Stainsbury Avenue, and to introduce Leanne Mikhailuk of the More Than a Roof Society, our not-for-profit partner. In addition to More Than a Roof, we have also been fortunate to have as part of the applicant team CPA development consultants and public architecture and communication. And Graham Plant and John Wall are both here this evening to answer any questions you may have. Our proposal is to develop a mix of 123 homes with a mix of affordability levels, including shelter, low income, and average market rental rates. We would like to thank BC Housing for the preliminary development funding they have provided, which has helped bring us to this milestone, as well as for their ongoing technical advice and support for the research elements of this project. In addition, we are also pleased to thank SCIAS and UBC for facilitating the information exchange with the City of Vienna and supporting all of the partners' efforts to share knowledge while advancing innovation in the development of affordable housing projects. This project has a number of objectives, the first of which is to provide affordable social housing for the people of Vancouver. We also have a number of environmental objectives. These include utilizing climate-resilient design strategies, constructing a near-zero emissions building, using renewable construction materials, and promoting the transfer of knowledge with the City of Vienna and with our own local design and construction industries about the lessons we have learned and will continue to learn through the design, construction, and operation of this social housing project. And as always, we work with our funders and partners to maximize the capital that will be invested in these affordable homes. For this project, we are utilizing off-site prefabrication techniques, have focused on the efficiency of the building's design, and have worked hard to keep the project on schedule and within budget. I would also like to recognize the Cedar Cottage Community Garden Society. Over the past 12 years, they have built not only a garden, but also community, and it is a beautiful and special place. Over the past few years, as this social housing development has been being planned, we have worked with CCCG to transition this site from a community garden to social housing. We have identified alternate garden locations for CCCG's consideration, and we have facilitated conversation with the Parks Board to look for other locations within existing parks. Should Council approve this rezoning application, both non-market housing development and MTR are committed to continuing to work with CCCG to try to help them rectify the encroachment of their shed so it doesn't impede development, as well as to clean up whatever garden materials remain after CCCG have removed any of the belongings they want to take with them and to be used again once they secure a new location. At this time, I'm very pleased to introduce Leanne Mikhailuk, the Executive Director of More Than a Roof Society and our partner in this important social housing project. Leanne isn't able to join us in person this evening, so she's on the WebEx, and I will stay at the podium to advance the slides for her.
Thank you so much, Heather. I just want to confirm that everyone can hear me. Can you hear me?
Sorry, yes, we can. I have my mute on.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Heather. I appreciate that. And I want to thank the entire Vienna House development team and to the city staff who have been collaborating with us and our team and working super hard on behalf of the project. So thank you so much for your efforts. I'd like to say good evening, Mayor Stewart and members of council. I am Leanne Mikhailuk. I'm the CEO of More Than a Roof Housing Society, and I'm thankful to be here this evening. We are grateful as an organization to have been selected as the future owner and operator of Vienna House. We are in our 36th year as a social and affordable housing developer and provider. And we actually started in partnership with the city of Vancouver, and in 1986 welcomed our first tenants to a courtyard community in East Vancouver. So we do have a successful model, not only of partnering with the city, but also with this model of housing. We're currently in 13 communities across the province of British Columbia. We house over 1,800 people, including seniors, singles, families, and we have a healthcare-based housing component as well. As you can see from the screen, our mission and purpose is truly about transformation. We work hard to break and interrupt. Thanks, Heather.
Sorry.
To break and interrupt, that's okay. The cycles of poverty and homelessness for our tenants, but also for our staff and the surrounding communities that we're a part of. We work really hard to be excellent neighbors, and we think we have a solid history of doing that. So in partnership with the City of Vancouver and BC Housing, we really see Vienna House as a transformational affordable housing project, and we're excited to be a part of this team. Next slide, please. We truly believe that social sustainability is a critical component of a community's well-being and longevity. So it's really important that when we're talking about these bigger societal issues of affordability and climate change, we also want to address quality of life. So both socially and culturally, it's important that community development is an integral focus. And for us, that's a part of everything that we do, and we consider it one of our core competencies. We believe when people are engaging in healthy and productive ways, so we want to make sure that there's opportunity to participate in community and that we have inclusive spaces that allow for that. We believe that there's a sense of ownership and belonging that follow naturally. Next slide, please. When we're involved in the development and operation of a housing community, we're looking for positive impact and change, both for our residents and the surrounding neighborhood, as I mentioned. We believe Vienna House offers positive social impact. We also believe that socioeconomic and social diversity that exists within a healthy community should be part of every development that we operate. So it's important for us to have mixed income households together. We learn from one another, we thrive together in community, and we have much more in common than we can imagine. So when we bring together singles, seniors, families, folks with disabilities, all with low to moderate income households, it really helps to promote a healthy community. And really, it looks like the communities that we all live in. Diversity is really, really important. We call this a continuum of housing, and we're really good at it. So we see Vienna House as a great addition to an already vibrant neighborhood, and we're looking forward to the completion of the building and meeting our new neighbors. Thank you very much for your time once again. And now I'd like to introduce one of our partners on the project, John Wall, Principal Architect for Public Architecture. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leanne, and thank you, Mayor and Council. So on behalf of the consultant team, I'm delighted to highlight some of Vienna House's more innovative features. In response to a rapidly changing climate and the need to build livable units next to a noisy SkyTrain, a courtyard-style housing development is proposed because it effectively addresses both of these issues. The acoustic consultant's report demonstrates that the courtyard will be an acoustic oasis with exterior sound levels at 53 decibels, compared to 73 decibels on the north side facing the SkyTrain. That's the difference between a refrigerator's hum in the courtyard and a vacuum cleaner on the north side of the building. Dual aspect units allow residents to open courtyard windows for nighttime ventilation while keeping north and west facing triple pane acoustic windows shut to keep out SkyTrain noise and traffic noise. When outdoor temperatures exceed 26 degrees Celsius, or noise is too loud, or air quality is poor, residents will be encouraged to close their windows and rely on mechanically cooled and filtered ventilation from a centralized energy recovery system, which is located on the north side of the parking structure to take advantage of cool air on the north side of the building. Our energy consultant used 2050 climate data to confirm that the units will be comfortable now and in the future. This mixed mode ventilation of kind of passive ventilation and mechanical ventilation increases life safety through improved redundancy and resilience. It improves resident thermal comfort, improves ventilation rates, and energy and cost savings for the project. Further, the courtyard's trees and shaded areas offer passive cooling through stack effects and prevailing east-west patterns, which will make the courtyard cooler and a bit of a refuge during hot weather where people can take a break from their apartments and go down to the courtyard to relax. We also did detailed daylight studies of the courtyard to ensure that it's not a dark place. So through the images you can see on the screen, the courtyard's east-west orientation provides good access to early morning light, midday and afternoon daylight. Further, white finishes and translucent glass guardrails reflect daylight to the lowest floors. Computer simulations demonstrate that the courtyard building increases the number of chance encounters by 55% and daily greetings by 33% over a conventional double-loaded corridor. I think everyone can appreciate that when you have an open courtyard like this, you're more likely to meet your neighbors. This promotes a sense of community and reduces loneliness. This increase in daily social interaction also increases the likelihood that residents will reach out to their neighbor when they are in distress. Enlarged walkways and exterior common areas on each floor encourage social engagement. At grade, the courtyard is designed to be a flexible social space with trees, shrubs, and climbing vines that allow for personal recreation, informal gatherings, meetings, parties, and seasonal celebrations organized by residents groups and MTR. This image is a view of the main building entry, which gives views from Stainsbury into the courtyard. And it's located next to the building office, to the laundry, amenity rooms, and children's south-facing play space to encourage more chance encounters and increase neighborliness with the community. And finally, this image here provides an image from the SkyTrain for morning commuters that are looking back at Vienna House. And Vienna House, this north-facing facade, is characterized by window boxes and Juliet balconies that provide screening and a reasonable buffer between resident units and commuters. And with that, I'd like to end my presentation and thank Mayor and Council for your attention. I'd also like to thank staff for all their diligence on the project. They've really been incredibly informative and have really helped the process move forward. They've done a tremendous job. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your presentation. Looks like we have some questions. This is the time, Council, you can ask questions of staff or the applicant, and I've got Councillor Kirby-Yung on for up to 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'll direct my first questions to the applicant because this is the opportunity we have. To the comment that you said it was important for you to have mixed incomes together and you viewed this as a continuum of housing. Can you speak to why that's an important value for you?
Hi, this is Leanne. Thank you so much for the question. What we want to do is recreate what a typical neighborhood looks like. And in the majority of neighborhoods around the city, that's what we have is socioeconomic diversity, generational diversity, and having the mixed incomes actually allows us to also support this model of housing for, revenues being able to meet the expenses of running the building.
Okay, that actually segued perfectly to my next question because we received a variety of correspondence and some of the comments from a couple of individuals were this is city-owned land and so is it reasonable and fair for a nonprofit, and the question was perceived as to have for market rentals and thereby be profiting off it. But can you comment on how that sort of below market, the hills and then the 30% of market, why that's needed in a project?
Well, again, it's about being able to support the expenses of the building and having a revenue model that is able to do that. So this isn't supportive housing. This is about building an affordable model that's sustainable for the long run and ensuring that we've got the income and the revenues generating to sustain us long term. So we look at everything from what's our operational budget to long-term capital planning. And so this model, we've worked with this model previously and on current projects that we have, and it just helps us to create a really sustainable model.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. And then another question, I was really interested in you when you talked about supporting the services, and one of the ones you mentioned was, and I believe I'm quoting, was a healthcare-based housing component. Can you provide some more perspective or detail on what that includes or what that is?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you again for the question. This isn't for the Vienna House project. That was just an introduction to More Than a Roof Housing Society. So we do healthcare-based housing. We have mental health and addiction recovery support in other buildings, but this is not one of those buildings.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. And I'll also and my next question is to staff. And it's with respect to the community garden. Obviously, a lot of the correspondence speaks to that, and it was identified in the presentation. I just want to confirm that it's already the commitment to find an alternate location for the community garden. And then I also heard, I think the second part of that was to work with the leaseholder with respects to helping clean up. Is that something that's already incorporated and doesn't need further direction from council?
So we have Caitlin Doward from Social Policy who can respond.
Thanks, Council. Caitlin Doward, Social Planner with Arts, Culture and Community Services. So staff at the city and VAHA have been working with the Garden Society from 2018 to 2021 to try to identify a new location for the garden, and those efforts haven't been successful. Per a memo that we provided to Council in January, we haven't been continuing with that, and if we were directed to do so, that would be led by engineering in partnership with real estate services, and there are some budget constraints to doing so. We don't have any capital funding allocated to urban agriculture in the upcoming capital plan, and we don't have a dedicated community garden coordinator position currently resourced. So funding to support that would need to be rebalanced from public space budgets that also support other public space priorities.
Okay, so following up on that, in terms of those are internal challenges you identified, but does the not landing a new location have anything to do with not aligning on? Is it just a resource issue internally, or does that have anything to do with not aligning on what that looks like from the community perspective and where?
Sure, I can speak to the locations that were the previous efforts. So there were several sites identified as potentials by city staff and VAHA, including 2 lots that are further up on Stainsbury Avenue. Ultimately, the Garden Society didn't consider the candidate sites to be viable due to constraints including size, topography, solar exposure, access, and concerns that they could also be developed in the future. And this is reflective also of a general trend with identifying new garden sites that our current capacity to identify them is lower than the demand for new spaces.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Councillor Hardwick.
That was actually going to be a question about where we were sitting with the community gardens. I note, staff, that we've seen some opposition come in from the neighborhood that are, again, I think it's been addressed in the presentation. The SkyTrain line will be very noisy for occupants, and I think that that has been taken into consideration. The general built form is, but have you looked at the critiques in particular from the Cedar Cottage area networks membership of this development? And do you have, if you presuming you have seen their critique, do you have any comments in reaction?
So the staff or the applicant?
Yes, sorry, this is staff here. My microphone wasn't on. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. We have assessed all of the comments that have been received, including those from the Cedar Cottage area neighbors, and we've deemed that the application as is appropriate for the location.
That's great. And did you interact in the public process? I saw in the presentation that you did that there had been an open house, and I believe and there had been feedback received, but I just like a little bit more information about your engagement with the immediate neighbors.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. So we did have the 3-week virtual open house where we did receive a number of correspondence, and I also corresponded directly with a number of the neighbors by email and by phone throughout the entire rezoning process.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate your answers.
Thank you. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, just a couple of questions. One, can you remind me, I think you said the application, this was made in December, is that right? Of just last year?
Yes, it was made in December 2020.
Did this go through the short program?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. It was referenced in one of the presentations that with the partnership agreement with Vienna, that the intention was to exchange learning and knowledge from these projects, and that it was to be a bit of a model and pilot in the city. And I'm just curious, because it started several years ago, obviously, how is it being levered here in the city as a learning opportunity in terms of building differently? Like the courtyard model I love. I've asked about it in the past why we don't see more of that, but just how are we using it as a tool for informing planning going forward and future social housing?
Thank you, Councillor Dominato, for your question. So this project itself is a demonstration project to reflect the entire MOC, but there's been a lot of technological aspects that have been shared in terms of green building, passive cooling, and also just in terms of how to use buildings as social spaces. So this project is a component of it, but there has been an ongoing conversation with City of Vienna, and staff continue to work with them to share insights, and we'll continue to after this project as well.
Okay. And do we see that informing, also informing our Vancouver plan as well, that's been newly approved?
Thank you, Councillor. I've been invited to that. Yes, we will.
You're not? Okay. And then my last question, just on the, I really appreciated, I'm sorry, I don't have the architect's name in front of me, talking about the design and talking about acoustics and climate resilience. Will the, on the side adjacent to the SkyTrain, will the building materials and even the windows, will they be like a triple pane, like to deal with that sound? I live on a very, very busy arterial, so I know what it's like to, and in terms of livability and quality of life. Is it?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I will defer that to the applicant.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Applicant.
Yes, thank you for your question. Yes, all the windows will be triple glazed and will have very rigorous air tightness testing. So that's one of the benefits of Passive House. It's great for acoustics and for thermal comfort.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
And by the way, this is like one of the best presentations I've seen holistically. So public hearing. So thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to who's next? Oh, 1 second, please. Sorry, my little thing's not working. Councillor Carr, up to 5, please.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I just when I just before I do a question, I just want to say I agree around the presentation. And my first question was really around the inner courtyard, because the drawings in the actual report that we got didn't seem to have a whole lot of space. They were crammed quite close together. What is the distance between the two? I guess what is the width of the courtyard?
Thank you, Councillor Carr. I'll defer that to the applicant.
Thank you for your question. The courtyard is a triangular space, so it does vary. It does pinch down at one end, which is approximately, and I apologize, I don't have the exact numbers with me today, but it's approximately 20 feet. And then at the wider end, do you happen to have the 5.5 meters at the narrow end?
Well, I'm sorry, at the narrow pinch down to 20 feet. On the wider end, it was what?
At the wider end, it's probably double that. So
40 feet.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's good, because the drawing, as I say, didn't give me a sense of the distances. So that's good to know. My other question has to do also with the community gardens, and I'm not sure. I guess it's staff that would answer this, but in terms of the relocation. I understand that there has been a motion at the park board around exploring some option for a community garden, but I wonder if there could be any indication from staff as to whether they are talking to park board staff around that, and also whether or not, as staff, you're talking to the school district, because I know that they also have an interest in locating gardens, food gardens, on school sites, and there are 2 schools in the neighborhood. And a third question, still to do with community gardens, staff, have you contemplated, given the direction we are providing to staff in both the Broadway plan and the Vancouver plan, to reallocate 11% of neighborhood streets for community use? Has there been any discussion around reallocating a street that is currently a car street for community garden?
Thanks for the questions. Caitlin Dorwood here, social planner with ACCS. To your first question around parks. So in 2018, the Garden Society did begin advocacy around relocating the garden into the southeast corner of John Henry Park. In May of this year, John Henry Park Renewal Plan was presented to the board with a recommendation from staff not to include the garden in the renewal, and this was related to a commitment in the renewal plan to reconciliation and decolonization planning. And the board unanimously adopted the renewal plan, but they also included a recommendation directing staff to explore inclusion of a garden in the renewal plan. So whether a garden is ultimately included remains to be seen. Park board staff expect to meet with the garden later this year to discuss possibilities. And in the meantime, they've also invited the society to participate in the renewal plan for General Brock Park. The second question was around the VSB. As far as I know, to the best of my knowledge, we have not explored that option for relocating the garden onto VSB property. I do know through discussion with VSB that typically gardens on school sites are integrated into school programming and with a teacher champion or another person from the school that's involved. So that would probably need to be part of a plan if VSB were to be involved. And then as to the road reallocation, I don't believe that's been explored in this area either, though, as you mentioned, it is in the Broadway plan included in some of the plans for the parklets there. But possibly is something that we could look at in this neighborhood, though I would need to confirm with engineering staff on that.
That's great. Just a brief follow-up in terms of VSB. I know that they've had some problems in getting continuity of teachers around their school gardens. So some have been very vibrant and then gone into disuse. So maybe a local community garden association might be an answer there that you might want to communicate with them.
Thank you. Councillor Weed. Questions to staff or the applicant?
Yeah, mine's on the increase in social connections and in the social determinants. Can the opponent speak to why they thought it was important to include how many social connections, increase the social connections, recognizing as we're seeing more and more cities move away from just built form, but really look at livability, happiness indexes, and well-being in design of buildings.
Thank you, Councillor Weeb. I'll defer that to the applicant team.
Thank you for the question. This is Leanne speaking again. For us, I mean, there's just so many great reasons why we need to be talking about social connection and social sustainability. We really work hard to ensure that this, not just the spaces that we offer our populations, but the programs that are tenant generated, tenant led. We ask our residents to speak into what they would like their communities to look like. So we really want to combat isolation. We know that there's a large percentage of our city that goes home alone, but that doesn't mean they have to be alone. So we wanted to work with the team, and it's been a very collaborative effort. I'm super sorry about that for everybody that's been a part of this, but that the courtyard design, and like I mentioned, we've got 36 years of history with this particular model. It really helps to generate. You can't walk out of your door and not see somebody else, whereas in a conventional apartment building, it's really easy to not see very many people for very long.
No, I think
I'm
this
not
is
sure if any.
yes. You'll be pulling research together and doing outcome research so that we can utilize this, recognizing we have our own building code in Vancouver, and it'd be great to start to use building design guidelines that support better health and connections, recognizing how harmful loneliness is. And I'm just wondering, is there a Vancouver house that's being built in Vienna?
Sorry there, Councillor. Thank you for your question. There is currently a Vancouver house being constructed in Vienna at this moment.
And how does it relate to this project, and what are the learnings we're hoping to learn from that project that we can incorporate into work here?
Thank you, Councillor. So I do not have sustainability staff here available to answer questions. However, my understanding is that the Vancouver House team is taking learnings from the Vienna House team, and just in terms of sharing green building technologies, and perhaps the architect here has more to add.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor. So we actually had a discussion recently with the architects in Vienna, and I think what's really exciting about the project is that there's information exchange going both ways. We've learned a lot from them in terms of their approach to sustainability, prefabrication, and innovative construction techniques. And from us, one of the main things that they really appreciate is the fact that halfway around the world, city councilors, architects, developers, and are grappling with all the same problems about how do you deliver truly sustainable housing that's affordable and deals with a rapidly changing climate. So they found it very interesting. There's lots of differences in about how the projects are approved, how engagement happens, but there's a lot of similarities between the two projects. Social sustainability is at the core of both projects.
And recognizing it's modular. Are we utilizing mostly BC modular for our project? Or are we using a lot of the modular that we built in Europe that would have been utilized by the Vienna team?
It's a bit early to say, but the design is really based around BC technology. So
okay, exciting. Looking forward to going to the opening of the Vienna or the Vancouver House in Vienna.
Okay. Cheers. Thank you.
Councillor Dejanova.
Thanks very much. Just a couple of questions. A few of them have already been asked. But I'm wondering, this considers integrated housing, so where everyone's door would be the same regardless of what they're paying for their housing. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that fits in line with our housing strategy where? Could you share that with me just on the public record?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll defer to Annie Maubelis in Housing.
Thank you for the question, Annie Maubelis, in Housing. I think you're wondering about the different affordability levels in the building and whether or not you would notice any difference with, if I can say, the front doors for each unit. Is that right?
Well, it's that, but I'm also just wondering where that falls in line with our policy. So you're on the right track there, but I'm hoping that you can note, just as I see in the referral report, the policies that aligns with the integrated housing approach.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I know when we talk about inclusionary zoning, where we're seeing turnkey to the city social housing, that's part of a strata building, for example. There's a lot of effort to ensure that there really aren't differences between the market housing and the social housing. Similarly, in a 100% social housing building like this one, there's good attention to detail around the shared spaces and places. I think this project in particular is paying extra attention to that social interaction, which I think is excellent. And I think it really adds to an improved project in that regard. So it's partly building design, but would really, you wouldn't notice a difference, for example, in the shelter rate units compared to the market rental units. And we would consider that good, public policy, good housing policy. I think this exemplifies that.
And one thing I didn't see in the referral report, and please forgive me if I missed it, but are all of the units, the lower rate units that would be operated by the nonprofit, are they on a specific level or floor? Are they on a lower level, or are they dispersed throughout the building?
I might defer to the applicant, but my understanding is they'd be dispersed through the building. And we actually have I think it's a 46% family unit mix, including 4 bedrooms here. So a variety of unit mixes, but I don't know if there's any clarification from the applicant or Allison on that.
Yeah. I'll wait to hear back and see if anyone answers that. I have 2 minutes here.
Yeah, hi, Councillor. Graham Plant here, just confirming that all of the units will be dispersed sort of evenly throughout the building.
Okay, so there isn't a specific floor where units would be operated at a lower rate. That's good to know. It's throughout the entire building on every floor?
Correct, yes.
Thanks so much. And then just on the design, another councillor had asked a question about courtyard. I myself, in my work in non-market, nonprofit housing, I've endeavored to work alongside private developers to look at the courtyard model. I understand that it's significantly higher in cost. Is that correct? And if so, could you tell me how much of a percentage you would estimate that it would add to this pro forma if you were to look at a courtyard model? Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor. So we did an exhaustive evaluation of sort of a conventional double-loaded corridor building and a courtyard-style building. And we actually found that the difference in the pro forma was dramatically less than we anticipated. It turned out to be more like a 5 to 10% premium, and these were in very early schematic design stages. So obviously, the margin for error in those costing estimates is quite high. What pushed us towards the courtyard approach in this instance was both the enhanced social connections and the advocacy of the nonprofit for that approach, but also the adjacency to the SkyTrain and the ability, as John was referring to earlier, to be able to keep windows closed on that north side that faces the SkyTrain and keep the corridor windows having the ability to be open.
In my last 10 seconds, can you tell me, did the courtyard add the ability to add the 4 bedrooms because of the light the windows would provide?
Good question. I don't know if it did necessarily, but it may have enhanced the ability to have more bedrooms with windows, yes.
Okay, that's my time. I appreciate your answers to my questions.
Thank you so much. We are, that's it for questions from council. Now we're going to move to the public portion of this, and we do have some number of speakers. Speaker number 1 is Andrew Walker, who is there in council chambers, I believe.
Yes, he's coming to the podium.
Great.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and staff. My name is Andrew Walker. I'm a resident of Vancouver, live less than a block from the proposed development, and I'm a director at Cedar Cottage Community Garden. Our community garden was founded in 2008 by a number of organisations, including the Vancouver Native Health Society. Originally situated only on TransLink land under the SkyTrain tracks at Victoria Drive and Hull Street, we expanded significantly just 2 years later in 2010, following an invitation from the city to convert an adjacent unused city-owned lot as part of their 2010 Garden Plot by 2010 initiative, itself part of the Olympic Legacy Programme. This is the 4th time over more than 4 years that I've had the opportunity to address council in regard to this proposed development and its impact on our community garden, which is located both on and immediately north of the proposed development. The first 2 times were when Vaha was given agency over the land for the proposed development, at which council directed Vaha and city staff to, and I quote, continue to work with the Cedar Cottage Garden Society to identify a new site in a nearby area to ensure the continuation of the garden activities, end quote. The referral report on this rezoning application runs to 48 pages with well over 100 conditions and recommendations covering such topics as urban design, crime prevention, landscaping, sustainability, and engineering. It seems that every aspect of the impact of the development on the community has been considered and addressed, down to the requirement for a $50,000 cash contribution from the owner/developer towards a pedestrian-actuated signal at Stainsbury and Victoria. In contrast, the community garden is mentioned only in passing. The loss of pollinator habitat, the desire to have the new landscaping recall the original garden, and twice how, and I quote, the city is working with the Cedar Cottage Community Garden Society to find an alternate location for the community garden, end quote. This lack of consideration for the community garden as the development moves forward is likely because there is no one within the city that has been tasked with protecting the interests of the garden, no one to argue for its significance to the neighbourhood, no one to put forward its value in creating community and enhancing food security. As a result, over the past 4 years, there has been a growing awareness that city staff would fail to find a new site for our gardening activities, or even to work effectively with us to ensure the best possible chance of success for our garden if it were only to strive to continue in its greatly diminished state, under the SkyTrain track, much reduced in space, with a 7-story development directly between itself and the sun. Following the decision by Parks Board staff not to include a community garden in the Trout Lake Park Renewal Plan, we approached city staff about the 2 empty lots previously offered on Stainsbury Avenue, but were informed these were no longer available due to imminent development interests following the recent sale of an adjacent lot. As you work towards providing stable and affordable housing for the most vulnerable in our society, I would ask that you not abandon your commitment to and legacy of community gardens, food security, and urban agriculture. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. You do have some questions. I just asked you to come back to the podium. Councillor Carr has questions for you.
Yes, thanks very much. I really appreciate Andrew you coming in and speaking again on this. I don't know if you caught my questions earlier on, but I'm trying to think of ways in which there can be long-term security, and you know, I've tried to get long-term security for a while. So for community gardens, I think they're so important. Two of the ideas I mentioned, I'm interested in your thoughts on. One is we have now a commitment in our Broadway plan and in our Vancouver plan to reallocate to 11% of road space to community uses. A community garden might be one of those. So that's one potential idea I'd like your response to. And the second is I know that the school board is very interested in including more community gardens on their school sites. And I don't know if you've ever had conversations with anybody at the school board or any local schools, but would be interested in your response around that potential.
We're essentially open to any idea, and I think those are really exciting things to explore. We did look at Gladstone Secondary, which is pretty close to our current location.
Yeah.
I guess in essence, the Trout Lake renewal plan was in progress at that point, and we decided that that was where we would put our efforts, and that's what we've been doing for the past 4 years. But yeah, we would be willing to explore any opportunity, and streets and school board land, I think, would both be potential opportunities.
Great, thank you. I appreciate your diligence on this, and the garden is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Yung. Up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Hi, Andrew. Thanks for speaking. So just one quick clarification. So in terms of specifically what you're looking for, you're just this evening in the context of the public hearing, the housing decision, is that correct? You're looking for a reaffirmed commitment from council to continue looking for an alternate location for the garden?
Yeah, I guess two things. One is we would like to find a new location, although we will strive to continue the garden, obviously much reduced and far from ideal. But we're not sure if that's going to succeed just because of the lack of sunlight. So yeah, a new location would be ideal. At the same time, there are issues around the garden shed. We don't really have the resources to move that. We're encroaching about 50 centimeters into city land, something that was a mistake some 15 years ago. And at the moment, there's no clear path to moving it the necessary 50 centimeters. We don't have that kind of money.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, that's it for questions. Thank you very much for coming in, Speaker. Really appreciate you your commitment to this process. Council, our next speaker is Celia Wong. Celia Wong, speaker number 2.
The speaker is not on the line.
Okay, thanks very much. Speaker number 3 then is Nathan Davidovich.
Yes.
Great, thanks. Thanks for calling in.
Hello.
Hi there. 5 minutes. Yep, 5 minutes whenever you're ready. Yep,
yeah,
I
know there were problems last time when I spoke. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm not a member of the Cedar Cottage area neighborhood, but I was a member of the Kensington Neighborhood Improvement Program Committee in the 1970s, and we were able to improve Kensington with a new library and a new Kensington Community Center. The late MP, Seema Holt, helped us secure federal funding. Staff had time since July the 5th, when this rezoning application was adjourned, to answer and write a proper memo of all the questions and the various people were asking. This is a standard practice in other municipalities, but I presume Vancouver is run is run differently, as pointed out by the CBC, which called Vancouver governance the most inefficient in Canada. Maybe the mayor can rewrite his political science book to include the comments from the CBC. I have to go back 40 years ago when the SkyTrain was being constructed in order to tell you that a station was promised between Broadway and Commercial Station and Nanaimo and 24th. And with all these new developments in the area, a station is definitely would be needed. I mean, would help many thousands of new residents who moved to the area since 1986. If Richmond can do it with the new Capstan station, there is no reason why Vancouver shouldn't do it. But when this, when we have all the old staff from the city who retired, and the new staff are not even aware of what some of the commitments and, in transportation that were made in the 80s and 90s. And, this is, that's very bad. I mean, the noise and vibration from the SkyTrain, I remember the media reporting that as the first item in 1986 after the SkyTrain was opened. They actually went to different homes to measure the noise and vibration. And, there is nothing done. I mean, on the city website, Shape Our City, there are various reports submitted, but there is no noise or vibration study or report. And I'm not sure why not. Why can't we measure it and quantify it and propose some solutions that other cities have done? The number 20 Victoria bus is the number one north-south bus route in the city in ridership. And this bus route had cutbacks in 2020, 21, 22. With all these new buildings, we need more bus service, not less. And again, we have a TransLink who doesn't know what the previous commitments were and what's supposed to be done. I mean, they have Transport 2050, but that report doesn't propose any improvements to bus service in Vancouver, at least until 2025, 26, or even later. And we can't wait so long. We need improvements right now. And, there is other improvements that are needed for streets and lighting substandards on Victoria Drive and sidewalk on Stainsbury Avenue. And, what's going to happen to the 10 properties east of this development on Stainsbury Avenue?
Thank you so much
when are they going to be?
Thank you so much for calling in. That is the 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your thoughts on this project. Don't see any questions for you. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to make my first call for speakers as we're at the end of the speakers list. And I'll ask the clerks, do we have anybody in the chambers to speak to this item?
We do have a pre-registered speaker after the list came out. Mayor Stewart, speaker number 4, Jay Hamburger.
Okay. Jay Hamburger, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll speak through the phone and not through the laptop. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So, my wife and I, we raised a child here on 3521 Marshall, just down from the proposed development. And I'm going to try not to get too emotional over this proposal. I am against it. We've been through, and some of your council members are still there, on the development of 3560, 3570 Hull Street, the old Harry Rankin property. That development has been going on now for 3 or 4 years, and it has been driving a number of us crazy with the noise, the stop-go of the development. Now, right practically alongside that Hull Street development, you're coming up with the Stainsbury development. More noise, more distraction, more driving us trying to get work done, and in my incidents, it's creative work. I run a theater, and I do 2 shows on co-op radio, and I do a lot of work from home, especially the broadcasting. I'm trying to concentrate. I'm trying to artistically get my work done in Vancouver. You're proposing a development of 7 stories in an area where I don't know how many 7 stories new developments there are on 20th, Stainsbury, Porter Street, and Hull. So this is new, a 7-story development. You're by SkyTrain. We've lived by SkyTrain for 30 years here. The noise gets worse. I can't help it. You can call me a liar, but you can come over here at night, stay with us, and hear the trains back and forth, back and forth. The desperation for development seems to me very strange, especially in this area that is overdeveloped now. You've got developments going on all over the place. But what about the 6-hectare Little Mountain site at Main Street and 33rd? Is that totally forgotten? There's a lot of space there for all kinds of community gardens, community housing, et cetera, et cetera. And yet you're picking this very small space around it that has been really developed heavily. You're picking on that, getting rid of a community gardens that is established for at least 10 years. And you have nowhere at the moment to replace it. You're putting the cart before the horse, no matter what sexy word.
You are fading out, Speaker. Speaker, you are fading out. We're finding it hard to hear you.
Well, you're putting the cart before the horse.
Well, you've really faded out. You're okay at the beginning, but you have almost completely faded out from our speakers.
Well, I can go online. Gardens that is established for at least.
Speaker, you have about a minute left. Speaker, are you still there?
It's the clerk here, Mayor Stewart. It seems he has disconnected.
Okay.
But, just hang on.
Okay, thanks.
It seems to be a connection issue, though.
Does seem to be.
No, the speaker is not on the line right at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, clerks. Well, so on this first call, is there anybody else, anybody in the chambers are on the line to speak to this item?
Yes, we do have a person here in the chamber to speak.
Great. Great. Speaker, if you wanted to come forward, tell us your first name, last name, and whether or not you're a resident of Vancouver. There we go. Whenever you're ready.
My name is Yiman Jiang. I'm the current chair for Cedar Cottage Community Garden. I live a block away from the garden. Our garden may be a small issue among the many things city has to deal with, but we are a significant part to our community and our neighborhood. I joined the garden 10 years ago. It has a huge impact on me. It has changed the course of my life. From someone who very much just kept to herself to an active community member. It gave me an understanding that with all the challenges we're faced with in the world today, the community is where the much needed changes will come from. I want to read to you a few words from our members. From Ken. Cedar Cottage Community Garden is a place where people come together.
Speaker.
Yep.
We do have this is a public hearing, kind of like a court proceeding, and so we don't read other people's letters. You can say how the letter affects you, but you'll have to speak on your own feelings on this project directly.
These are all submissions have been publicly submitted.
That's fine, and that's the proper process. But in this 5-minute portion, it's about your reflections on the garden.
All right.
So
So can I speak just not quoting, but speaking as in the spirit of things?
Well, you try it out, and I'll tell you if you get there. How's that?
Okay, the words, their words are, it's difficult to make friends in this city. It's a place where people come together to grow fruit, vegetables, and flowers. It's a place of learning. It's a place for kids to learn where food comes from. It's a place for people to create a space where everyone can join. It's a place for people to connect to as a community and to learn from each other. It's for these reasons and many other reasons that we want to continue our garden, to continue our work in our garden. Because our work here is not just about gardening, it's also about people, about the relationship we create with each other and the relationship we create with everything around us and the environment. Community projects like our garden only exist, survive, and thrive with the help of the city. Over the past 4 years, for the most part, it was our understanding that there would be a range of help from Vaha through our garden's transition. However, in the last 6 months, everything changed. We were told there was no money to help us. Our garden situation isn't new. Twice you gave directions to staff to ensure the continuation of the garden activities and report back with any recommendations on how the city might support us. Yet there is no provision at all for the garden in this referral report, as if we don't exist. Further, our garden has been entirely removed from the city open data portal of community gardens. I have been trying more than 2 years to schedule a joint meeting with City and Parks Board without any success. Since July 5th hearing, staff reached out to us, but there are still obvious gaps. We understand that the city doesn't have unlimited resources. We never expected that. But we do depend on appropriate help at times like these. Displacement isn't easy, whether it's a person or a community garden. This is the third and final chance we have before you to request for help for both our remaining and future garden site, for both short-term and longer-term help. Thank you.
Thank you. You do have a question from Councillor Boyle. Go ahead, Councillor Boyle, up to 5 minutes.
Yes, thanks so much for the leadership you provided the garden. I just wondered, Councillor Carr asked an interesting question of the previous speaker connected to the garden, and it made me wonder if there have been conversations with the garden looking at some of the space at Gladstone High School just up the road.
Well, Gladstone actually has a very active garden society. So in their courtyard of the school, they have a fairly large garden within that. So we Gladstone students also have been coming to our community garden. From what I understand, the school garden is meant solely for educational purpose through their school programming. So the space, that's what the space they want to preserve it for. The community garden will be providing for the entire neighborhood. So we haven't explored that. We're certainly open to it, but I think it's the school should make that decision, not us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thanks again for all of your time and work.
Thank you.
Thanks. That is it for questions for you. So I will thank you so much for coming in, but now I'll move on to ask the clerks if there is anyone else on the line or in the chambers for this item.
Yes, there is another speaker on the line.
Great. Speaker, if I could have you say your first and last name and whether or not you're a resident of Vancouver, that would be great.
Hi, is that me?
Yes, it is you.
Anyways, hello, dear Mayor and Councillors. My name is Celia Wong. I was born and raised in Vancouver. I'm a condo owner, and I helped build a community garden sitting below the proposed development in 2008. Although I've witnessed significant development along 18th to 22nd along Commercial and Victoria Drive over the last 16 years, I've never felt the need to comment until now. This development is called social housing, yet only 20% is specifically designated as such. Given that this development is being funded to the tune of $32.8 million by public funds, and this is city land, there should be no market rentals in this location. We already have lots of new rentals sitting empty along Victoria and Commercial Drive close to Stainsbury. At the very least, 30% should be identified as housing at deep subsidy rates, with the remaining offered at rent geared to income rates with an income maximum set at housing income limits levels. With this revision, there will be housing for those who need it the most. As a local resident who has belonged to the community garden since its inception, I would like to echo some of the remaining concerns of the gardeners. We would like assurances that the garden will not be facing a huge legal and financial bill should we be unable to fully reduce the city land back to its original condition. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to share my concerns. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for calling in tonight. We appreciate it. Clerks, I am going to make my third and final call for speakers. And Council, we're at 7:33, so we'll come back at 7:38. See if there's anybody else on the line. Okay, see you in 5 minutes.
Hey, speakers, Council is just taking a little recess, so they
Just wondering if anybody else is on the line or in the chambers.
Mayor Stewart, yes, this is the clerk, and we think we might have the speaker that was speaker number 4 that got cut off.
Okay, sure. Jay Hamburger?
Yes, we believe that's who it is.
Okay. Do we have Jay Hamburger on the line, please? Jay Hamburger, do we have you on the line?
Sorry.
Jay Hamburger, your line is open. Clerks, he doesn't seem to be there.
No. It could be a muting issue.
Okay.
Hello?
Oh, hi there.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. Could you either speak to us on your phone or on your computer? Probably on your phone.
I'm speaking now on the phone.
Okay. Could you turn off your computer, at least the volume, so we don't hear it in the background?
Well, all right. Can you turn off the computer? Just turn it all off. Just turn the whole thing off. Yeah.
So we caught most of what you had to say, but we'll give you another couple of minutes if you want to continue.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I mean, I was sorry I was cut off. I know there's a rush to develop housing. I understand that, but there is the 6-hectare Little Mountain area. Nothing's been done with that, and you've got this community garden here, and nowhere really at the moment a proper proposal that the community gardens agrees with to move it, which in most people's minds might be putting the cart before the horse. 7 stories is, I think, a little bit more than most of the development that's been going on here. And you are pushing people that have been going through for 3 or 4 years the Harry Rankin development area that has just been going on and on and on. Marshall Street is really a nice street. I hope I'm not too privileged to say that. But we have a lot of kids on the street that play in the street. And the more cars you have going down the upper Hull Street development, and now the Stainsbury, going down Marshall Street, we're looking at kids getting hit. I understand the need for housing, God knows. But really, are you solving the problem of those homeless on Hastings Street? When you've got 80% of the housing on this development going to middle to high-end affordable housing, 20% to low income. Why not make it all low-income housing and try to really help solve a problem of homelessness? I mean...
So thanks. We've given you your full time, but if you want to just a few concluding sentences, that would be great.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I am opposed to this as a resident for 30 years and one who has walked through that garden and enjoyed what the gardeners are doing. And also I've done a performance there with our theater right side the garden under SkyTrain that was lovely, very lovely attended. So I'm sure that will all end.
Thank you very much for your contribution this evening, and of course your greater contribution to the city. So really appreciate it, and you phoning in tonight. Thanks. I don't see any questions for you, so I'll say thanks again so much for calling in.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to. So we have done our 3 calls. Clerks, is there anybody else on the line or in the chambers?
Yes, Mayor, there is. There are 3 more callers.
Okay, great. Can we have the next caller, please? First and last name and whether or not you're a resident of Vancouver. Next caller, please. First and last name and whether or not you're a resident of Vancouver.
Hello.
Hi there. You've got up to 5 minutes. We need your first and last name and whether or not you're a resident of Vancouver. Hello?
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
Please
Sorry.
go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Just need your first and last name and whether or not you're a resident of Vancouver, and then you have up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Blair Smith, and I'm a resident of Vancouver. I live down the road just near Nanaimo Station, and I actually SkyTrain past this development site every day on my way to work, and then I walk past it on my way home normally during the summer months. So I do pass this site quite often, and I think that it's a wonderful site for housing. I'm in full support of this development. I think the whole area could really use some more density and make it more lively and more a place to be. It's got magnificent access to parks, tons of schools around it for families. And this development really suits the neighborhood with the fact that it has a mix of unit types, a mix of different units for moderate income housing, geared to income, as well as deep subsidy housing. And I think that is really important for this area where most of the units around us are single family homes. I rent in a single family home. And I think it's really unaffordable to live in this neighborhood and to live in this city. I used to live on the west side of Vancouver. I have slowly been pushed further and further east, and I work on the west side of Vancouver. So I take the SkyTrain to Commercial and bus all the way out to Point Grey to go to work every day. And I think we really need to think about the importance of housing in our city and making sure that at least people can stay in the city, even if it is on the far east side of the city where we're building a lot of this housing. I listened to the supportive housing development in Kits, and I heard a lot from people there that they wanted a nice mix of housing, and I think this really shows a development where they're providing that. So again, yeah, fully supporting this. I didn't have much else to add, but I do love the design of this building as well, and thank you for your time and listening to me.
Hey, thanks. Sorry, can we get your name again, please?
Yes, my name is Blair Smith.
Blair Smith. Okay, thank you so much. I don't see any questions for you, but do really appreciate you calling in for our process this evening. And with that, I'm going to move on to the next speaker. We have the next speaker, please. First and last name.
Speaker with phone number ending in 8159. Your line is unmuted.
Hi, speaker. Hello, speaker.
Grace, your line is unmuted.
Grace, do we have you there? Next speaker.
Can you hear me?
Sure can. Yes, please. Can I have your first and last name? Can I have your first and last name, please?
My name is Grace McKenzie.
Great. Go ahead.
I am Hi, my name is Grace McKenzie, and I'm a resident in Vancouver. My family has owned the same property in Cedar Cottage for over 80 years, just a few blocks from the project. I'm opposed to this project as it stands. I want to see nice homes built for the tenants, homes built for low-income working people at 30% of income with no market rentals here. The form of the building, there should be a one-story, 2.40 FSR, 101-unit building here. This was originally proposed in the May 2021 bid. You've received 2 links for these bids through correspondence from our Residents Association, the Cedar Cottage area neighbors. The current proposal is warehousing people. Staff changed the proposal to 2 7-story, 3.53 FSR, 123-unit building in order to maximize the amount of affordable housing being delivered on public land. In my view, maximizing too much at the expense of livability. The building should be placed further from the SkyTrain line and closer to Victoria Drive. It should have large, mature trees planted between the SkyTrain line and the building to dampen the noise. It should not have an interior courtyard because the SkyTrain noise will reverberate in the courtyard and make it unusable. In other words, make this a nice place to live, not a place to warehouse people. The use in the building. The staff report on page 3 says, the application proposes a 7-story residential passive house certified building with 132 social housing units. There should be no market rentals in this project. Public money is being used to create and operate this project, therefore it should be 100% social housing consisting of all Hills units. Hills is what we need in our neighborhood. Rents should be no more than a studio, $950 a month, 1-bedroom, $1,200, 2-bedroom, $1,600, a 3-bedroom or larger, $2,000 a month. These rents are from the city's Rental Incentive Programs Bulletin, last updated February 2022, and from Schedule H of the Zoning and Development Bylaw. This area does not need more market rental buildings. Much of the new market rental units built over the last 5 to 10 years still sit vacant. They have vacancy signs up for 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units every month since they were built. This area also does not need more shelter rate units. Within a 10-block radius of this project, we have 218 new shelter rate units, as well as others. Send this back to staff to change this project to make it a decent place for the tenants and not a place to maximize the number of units you can squeeze onto a lot. You're going to need air conditioning in this building because one will not be able to open the windows because of the SkyTrain noise. Please listen to what the community is in what. Please listen to what the community has suggested for this project. I hope you've read the email I sent you through the public hearing form. It has a list of the community's concerns regarding this project. I'm extremely confused as to why the operator has said that they need the market rental housing to support their operational costs when I received today a letter from BC Housing where they say they are paying for the construction and the operating costs. So I'm confused on that point. One more thing that bothers me. This proposed building height is actually 8 stories tall. The staff report calls this a 7-story building, but it will have an amenity space on the roof that staff don't include in the calculations of height. So in the end, this building will be 8 stories tall. This is the same height as the Lee building at Broadway and Main and next to detached homes. Please take this excessive height into consideration. Even a 7-story building is too tall here. This will shadow sidewalks and roads around the project. Do the right thing here. Build for people, not purely density. Thanks.
Thank you. You do have a question from Councillor Hardwick. Councillor Hardwick, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Grace.
Yes.
I did ask staff if they had addressed the concerns that had come from the Cedar Cottage residents. Did you hear that?
I did.
And what would your response be back?
They didn't. No, they didn't. They didn't take into consideration what we had asked for at all. I can just going to pull up what we asked for. I don't have it right off the top of my head.
Well, I have it. But let me move on.
Okay.
The courtyard. You were not supportive of the courtyard. I personally was encouraged that it had an east-west trajectory because of light. And they had addressed the issues having the windows open into the courtyard but close on the external facing towards the SkyTrain and towards the road on the other side. Moreover, they discussed, if not air circulation as part of the design, and maybe that's something, if staff's listening or the applicant, we could go back and have another look at after this. But very specifically, did you look at the issues that were solved through the built form of the courtyard. Because I'm actually was persuaded in the presentation that I thought that it was a positive.
No, the courtyard's terrible. It's only about 12 feet wide, and at the widest end of it, which is a few feet wider, it has a staircase in it. And so it's practically useless. And on top of it all, you've got all these walkways looming over the courtyard from about 75 feet tall, looking down, from 7 stories up, looking down on this courtyard. It's going to be hell. It's going to be ridiculous in there. It's and another thing, one of our members mentioned, it's going to be like a chimney. If there's ever a fire in there, those means of egress, as she called it, walkways are going to be full of smoke, and you're not going to be able to get yourself out of the building. And especially if you're a senior with a walker, or if you have little kids, it's not going to happen. You're just creating a problem there. Get rid of the courtyard, put in air conditioning so that the inside walkway is cool, because you're going to need it. You're not going to be able to open up those windows to the SkyTrain. We live here. We know we have to shut up when the SkyTrain goes by. So it's really noisy. You've got.
I think there was some issue. Sorry
Pardon?
to interrupt. I recall that Councillor Carr asked a question about the width of the courtyard, and I thought it was 20 feet, not 12.
It might be 20 at the widest end, but it's not 20 at the narrowest end.
Interesting.
Hello?
Okay. The other point, Grace, was when we were looking at 6-7 stories on the SkyTrain side, but when we looked at the surrounding buildings, as in the staff report, they were 5, 6, 7 stories in the immediate vicinity, including directly across the street. So there is a precedent that has been established for this height or near this height. It's not like doubling the height. It's maybe an extra story. But do you think that it's that big a deal?
That is a big deal. It is a big deal. It's a lot bigger deal to have an extra story. It's not just the 7-story. It's the amenity space on top is going to be a story. So you've got an extra 2 stories there. It's a little bit different having a 6-story building than an 8-story building next to detached houses. And even next to the Harry Rankin site, the one on Hall Street, that's only going to be 5 stories tall there. So it's going to set a terrible precedent for our neighborhood.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask some of these questions back to staff that would, if I'm sure they're listening and can reflect on some of your concerns so that we can discuss it further.
Thanks so much.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd sure like to have somebody find out what's going on with the operational costs, because if BC Housing has just told us in an email, told me personally in an email today that they're paying the operational costs, then why is the operator saying that they need the market rental to support their operating costs? What's going on? What's the truth?
Well, great. Thank you very much for your input and your work in the community.
Thank you.
Thanks. I don't see any more questions for you, so I am going to go back to staff and see if there's anybody else on the line or in the chambers for this item.
No one coming forward in the chamber, but I do understand we have one more speaker on the line.
Great. Thanks. Speaker, please go ahead.
Speaker with phone number ending in 5243, your line is unmuted.
Speaker, are you
with
there?
phone number ending in 5243, your line is unmuted.
Speaker, are you there, please? Speaker, are you there? I don't hear the speaker, clerks.
Yes, the line is unmuted, but there doesn't seem to be response.
Okay, we'll give it one more try here. Speaker, are you there? Could you unmute your line, please? I think I hear somebody back there. Speaker, are you there? Hello, speaker, are you there? No. Okay, clerks, I think we'll probably just move on. Is there anybody else who is in the chambers or on the line?
No one in the chamber and no one else on the line.
Okay, thank you so much. With that, then we'll close the speakers list. And as few or no public comments received after 5 p.m. today, we're going to close the receipt of public comments and we're going to move on to the applicant and ask the applicant if you have any closing comments.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. We appreciate everyone's attention and comments tonight. We have nothing further.
Thank you so much. Applicant have any closing, staff have any closing comments?
No closing comments.
Thank you so much. We have questions to staff. Councillor Swanson, questions to staff, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, I wonder if staff could give us a plain language explanation of why market rents are necessary in this development. I know I'd rather have no market rents myself, but usually the reason is to make the finances pencil out. So I was hoping maybe somebody from staff could give that explanation for some of the speakers.
Thank you, Councillor Swanson. I'll defer to Annie Mablis in housing.
Great. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, Councillor Swanson. It's Annie Mablis in housing.
Sorry, a little faint there. If you could speak directly into your mic, that would be great.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little faint. Sorry.
Maybe I've got a fan blowing. I don't know if that's a bit better.
I think we can probably make that out.
Okay. I know that there were several questions regarding the contributions from BC Housing and why there is a need for market rent. So this project has received funding through the Community Housing Fund, and there's a variety of rents that form part of that grant program, which are articulated in the report. And so those market rents do come into play to help create the affordability, in particular of those shelter rate units. And then there's also 50% of the rent geared to income Hills unit. In other projects that we see, there might be 100% shelter rate units, and those projects are funded through other funding streams from BC Housing, for example, the Supportive Housing Fund. And so depending on which funding stream BC Housing is funding a project through would determine different levels of affordability. So it is true that they're providing capital and operating, but it isn't 100% shelter rates in this instance. It's not supportive housing. It's not coming through that kind of grant program. And so the mix is what it is based on the CHF, the Community Housing Fund funding program.
So it's the issue that the nonprofit that's going to be running it has to pay off a mortgage. And in order to pay off that mortgage with the amount that BC Housing has given it, it has to have some market rents.
That's right. For a project that doesn't have any BC Housing funding, what we see is for the city kind of minimum definition is 70% market rents to help offset the 30% that's affordable. So it's really a combination. The rents on the door help make the project whole. So
BC Housing isn't giving the applicant enough money to make all of the units at 30%. Is that the case?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Swanson. Councillor Hardwick, up to 5 minutes. Questions to staff.
Good. My first question is about the courtyard and the width of the courtyard and the notion that that the courtyard will be like a cavern was the way that it was described. Can we have some further discussion around the courtyard, please?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. Derek Robinson, Development Planner. So just to clarify on the width, it is 18 feet at the minimum end there, and then approximately 40 feet as noted at the largest dimension. So in terms of the courtyard, there are a number of conditions in Appendix B, and in part those certainly respond to what was heard from the public. Those are around the livability of the project, and so there are conditions in terms of a minor reduction potentially in the building setback to allow for a slightly larger courtyard. So that's something that could be explored through a DP stage should council approve the rezoning. There's also conditions around the maximizing solar access and minimizing noise disturbance in the courtyard, as well as, again, demonstrating that noise mitigation has been done for those units fronting the SkyTrain. But really the big benefit here in terms of livability is the bedrooms and windows that are able to face the courtyard, and particularly those that are for those units that are fronting the SkyTrain, right? But then further to that, the applicant has certainly outlined a vision for how that courtyard will function and will serve resident needs. And we're certainly seeing, obviously, this week in terms of the type of weather we have here, some of the benefits that can come from that, and even if it doesn't have full solar access at all times, it's still very much a usable space.
What about the air conditioning question?
Yeah, so in this case, the applicant has taken a strategy in which they're, doing both passive and active cooling strategies, right? And so, as was noted, they're using 2050 climate data, and they do have a number of approaches in terms of summer overheating. And so, some of those measures are, exterior window shades, some of the balcony overhangs along particularly the south and west facades, as well as the cross ventilation that you get from the courtyard typology itself, having windows, facing two aspects. And then as well, there is partial mechanical cooling as well. And so that combination, we're confident will address these issues.
Are there any comparables where you've got a building of this size adjacent to a SkyTrain line that what the last thing you want is for the courtyard to act as a funnel, a noise funnel, right?
Yes.
So is there something that you can compare it to, or is there a way that you can do sound modeling around something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So two questions there. Definitely there will be sound modeling and sound measurement. And in fact, the draft CD1 bylaw requires that. There are maximum thresholds in terms of noise that will need to be met, and that will be demonstrated through a professional acoustic report through the DP stage should this be approved. So that's in terms of the modeling. And in terms of examples, yeah, absolutely, there are a number. And I should mention as well that this proposal will meet all of the TransLink sort of proximity guidelines that are in place for development near SkyTrain. But one particular example was one that was approved at public hearing by this council in 2019, and also a social housing project, and that was brought forward by VAHA as well, and also was going to be built to Passive House standards. And that was a 102-unit project at 3279 Van Ness Avenue.
Right. So, the notion was one of the speakers was let's put a bunch of tall trees along the line close to the SkyTrain. Instead of having a courtyard, move the building back towards the street. Was that approach ever considered? And if so, why was the solution with the courtyard selected?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. As the applicant noted, and as can be seen in their drawing package, there was a rigorous study of various building typologies, which included more of a typical sort of L-shaped building that would be set further back, and presumably, would have more space to plant larger trees. However, it is, I guess, I'm not able to quote specific studies, but I think we've certainly heard anecdotally that a row of large trees is not going to provide significant, noise mitigation, and the approach to being able to have a bedroom that's, not facing the SkyTrain, but instead facing a courtyard and having a window that can open to that space would certainly be proving to be more sufficient in terms of noise mitigation. And then just quickly, I can note that they are proposing to plant a number of trees, which will be on terra firma, not on parquet slab, along that north edge there, with the remaining space that is there.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Councillor Kirby-Yung, up to 5 minutes for questions to staff.
Actually, I don't have any further questions at this point. Can we move the recommendations at this stage, Mayor?
Sure thing. Do we have a seconder?
Councillor Boyle.
Councillor Dejanova seconded. Okay, we're on the debate now. Councillor Boyle, over to you. 5 minutes for debate.
Yes, thanks so much, Mayor, and to staff and the applicant. I am very excited about this project. I think the design is beautiful. I love the courtyard. I'm thrilled, of course, that it's passive house, non-market, mixed income housing. I think this partnership with Vienna is exciting. Of course, people in Vancouver talk about housing in Vienna as the sort of example that we hold up all of the time. And so I'm just very excited about this partnership and to see this project move forward. And I walk and jog by that site often, and so look forward to more people being able to call it home. I did circulate an amendment that council should have in front of them to work to address some of the concerns that I think are really valuable to keep working on, that we've heard from the community garden members, both from speakers today as well as in correspondence that we have received. So maybe, Mayor, I think I heard
second, Councillor
Kirby-Yung second. And
I'm just letting you finish your time there, but
thank you.
We're now on an amendment queue, seconded by Councillor Kirby-Yung. Councillor Boyle, yeah, you can go first if you like, because
I'll just read out the points that are the council directs staff to continue to work with the Cedar Cottage Community Garden to assist them in finding a new location. And I know Councillor Carr has some more specific ideas that I think are really valuable to add in around that, as well as to provide, we heard this from speakers, to provide some discretion in the community garden license agreement in the event that the volunteer run garden isn't able to fully restore the leased land to its original condition. Directing staff to have some flexibility and discretion in that, as well as to strive to provide the longest possible time for them to continue using the space before the development is ready to begin. And I'll just say, in addition to my excitement about the project, I spent many years coordinating a school and community garden nearby. It was a community garden on a school property, provided a lot of richness for both the community as more broadly and the community connected to the school. And in that capacity, worked with a number of community garden organizations around the city, and particularly around East Vancouver, and starting and supporting community gardens. I sometimes think of that as sort of 3 jobs ago, but still very near and dear to my heart. And so appreciate the work that staff have been doing on this. I know it continues to be a budgetary and staffing challenge for us, but hope that this addresses some of the concerns that we've heard from the community garden leaders and members. I'll leave it there. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Okay, so Councillor Carr, you're up next on the amendment.
I've circulated an amendment to this amendment.
Okay. I have checked with, just so council knows, I have checked with law on both of these because they were provided in advance and there's nothing, they are lawful. And also planning staff don't see, for example, that we would then need to send the proposal back to, or anything like that with these amendments.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah.
So,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
So basically, Council, as we've been working through our much bigger picture plans, the Broadway plan and the Vancouver plan, you'll see that I added amendments in both that were passed unanimously that really looked at exploring reallocating street space, 11% of streets for community use, and I did include community gardens or food gardens in amongst those uses. So I really think we should get going on this. Like it's an idea that's worth us moving forward more quickly, in my mind. In this case, because of the emergency of wanting to make sure that this very long-standing, incredibly important community garden does have a home. But secondly, because I think that that climate change is actually going to have an incredibly negative impact on food supply. Global food supplies are going to change radically as parts of the planet we are used to getting food from will no longer be able to produce it. So I think food security in terms of our own ability to supply food is going to become increasingly important. So those are the reasons I want to see us look at the street, the reallocation of streets. I certainly have been following what is being done in Europe around reallocating streets for community use, where car use is greatly diminished, in some cases eliminated, but in most cases allowing parking, but very, very diminished in terms of its use for cars and instead for people. So I think, as I say, it's a really good fit for that program. And secondly, as one of the members of the committee that was established as a joint committee to look at capital planning between Vancouver Council and the Vancouver School Board, the issue of and the importance of food gardens on school sites has been raised, and I don't know what all the challenges might be in that regard, to have a permanent community garden there run by a community garden society. But since school board, I know in the past has had difficulties with maintaining school gardens on an ongoing basis because they've tended to be at the direction and the support of individual staff people who may or may not continue on over many years with that. This might be a permanent way forward. And I have fought for, I think my first motion was like 10 years ago to get permanent security for food gardens. I think it's really time to do that in this city, given the comments I've already made.
Thank you. Councillor Dejanova, up to 5 minutes for debate on this item. We actually, Councillor Carr, need this seconded.
Councillor Boyle, I'm happy to second.
Thank you. We're on our amendment queue now. If anybody wants to speak to this, Councillor Dejanova, up to 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mayor Stewart. Can I just ask a point of information through you, Mayor Stewart? I'm not sure.
Sure can.
Or you want to defer to staff? I would usually see this at a council meeting, but we're at a public hearing, and I'm just wondering if this amendment would mean that there would be any possibility that this would be held up until the exploratory work was completed, since this is already being done at council. I understand the intent of Councillor Boyle's amendment to address the issues brought up by speakers, specifically who may be displaced, but this seems like broader policy work, and I'm just wondering if you might be able to comment on that or share some insight.
Staff, thoughts on whether or not this will hold up the work on this project? Councillor Curry might go on, or somebody might just make sure folks are on mute because I'm getting
Council, it's Jeff Greenberg, Assistant Director of Legal Services, and no, it will not hold up the development because it's not being imposed as a rezoning condition. It's being added as an additional recommendation for staff to work with the groups. So we will do that concurrently, and the rezoning will not be held up as a result.
Thank you.
That's important to me. And although I think this is redundant because I believe Councillor Carr herself already said this work is being included in the Vancouver plan work and other work that staff had been directed to do. I believe that Councillor Weeb had brought forward actually. I will support it, understanding that this isn't going to in any way affect the timeline.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, with that, I'm going to try an oral vote on this one just to see. All in favor say yay.
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 Any
Yay.
opposed? Any opposed to this? No, thank you so much. Clerks, can you mark that as unanimous, please? I'm going to go back to the amendment queue. Councillor Dejanova on the amended amendment.
Nothing further. At this time, I'm happy to support the amendment as amended.
Thank you. Councillor Wiebe?
Yeah, I will be supportive. When we talk about building complete communities, we talked about building on what we love and what creates community. I think that looking at all opportunities to keep this community, but also grow it, and see if there's opportunities for the residents in this building to join the community garden. So, and street space, recognizing the importance of us building on our communities to make these communities livable. So I love the social determinations of health on connectivity that the
Thank you.
provides. So I will be supportive.
Thank you. Councillor Carr, can you mute, please? Because you're still getting background noise. Thank you. I don't see anybody else on this amended amendment. Maybe I'll try my luck at an oral vote again. All in favor of this, say yay.
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 Any opposed? None opposed, clerk. So if you could mark that in the voting record, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. And now we're back to the main queue. Councillor Boyle, you still have a minute and a half left.
Thanks. Just appreciate that support around the garden and all the folks who came to speak, and so specifically name the concerns they had. And like I said, excited to see this project move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Carr, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, just to be brief, I'm really also appreciative of the speakers who came to talk to us and the importance of that community garden. What I like about this project is the fact that it is one that provides for a much deeper level of affordability than we have typically seen or than is expected, so that instead for social housing where the minimum really is 30% at Hills, 70% at Market. This is 20% at deep subsidy, and then another 50% at rent geared to income with the maximum at Hills, and then only 30% at Market. And I know that some speakers questioned that, but this is a far more affordable building than I've seen or than we've seen at council in many cases. So I'm appreciative of this application for that reason, and I took a look at some of the expected rents for that deep subsidy, and they are really, really good. Also, I really love the fact that this has got not just studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms, but also 4 bedroom units in it. So again, looking at a families that can provide, have affordable, stable housing in a really great neighborhood makes a huge difference to me. Also, I love the fact that it is a passive house standard. It's near zero emissions, and with the idea of climate resilience in mind, that inner courtyard. I would love to have seen that as a bigger courtyard. I've seen examples in Europe and in Vienna, but in lots of other European cities where those inner courtyards are much bigger. And I'm hoping that in Vancouver we move to that kind of model. But in the interim, at least, there is an inner courtyard that has a cooling effect and is important from a climate perspective, but from a social perspective. We've heard from so many people coming to speak to us at public hearing that having social spaces where people can meet each other and socialize and form a community is incredibly important, and so I'm appreciative of that.
Thank you. Councillor Dominato, up to 5, please.
Thanks, Mayor. I feel like Councillor Carr covered almost everything I was going to say. So I will say first a couple of things. Thank you to the speakers who came to speak and represent the gardens. I appreciate how important it is to the community, and appreciate Councillor Boyle's amendment to give some direction for staff to work with the community to address concerns there, but also to look at a new placement. And I do like the suggestion of potentially school lands, because that has been a conversation we were having at school board about how to, where we may have surplus space on school lands to utilize them. So I think that's possibly a great, win-win-win potentially, is partnering with the school. I do also want to reflect again what I said earlier when I was asking questions, is I think this was overall a really fantastic application and presentation to council in terms of all the different partners, which includes the city in this, but also from More Than a Roof Housing Society, which I was not familiar with until just recently when I saw this application, but I really gave us a strong sense of the broad objectives of the housing and the model and the operations, and so appreciative of that. And like Councillor Carr, I was very much struck by the efforts for the deeper affordability, the high percentage of family-sized units, and the passive house design. And then, as I mentioned earlier, really love the courtyard model. It's something I've asked staff about in the past, about how could we do more of that in the city with our housing developments, because it does add an element of, at least for me, livability. And I did live in Europe as well. So with unique sites, to be able to add that in, I think is fantastic. And the fact that there is going to be that outdoor and indoor amenity spaces to support that social connection, and the operator spoke about social sustainability and social impact, and I really see how the design of the building is going to support that. So it's not just the operator, but the actual design of the building is going to support that social connectedness, which we know, having seen that through COVID, the impact of social isolation on individuals. We see it on seniors. So I think there's the social benefits are very positive. Overall, I'm really thrilled to support this project. I think it's a fantastic one, and it's actually a really nice one to wrap up our last public hearing on, so that we will have in this term. So thanks to the staff and the applicants and partners who've brought it forward. Thanks.
Councillor Swanson, up to 5.
Yeah, thanks to all the speakers and the staff for this. I think it's a good project. I hope we can get action on the garden. We desperately need social housing, and I appreciate the extra affordability in this. Usually we can only get 30% for people earning about 50 to 80K, and this one we get 50% for them plus 20% at shelter rate, and I think that's good. And I hope the project can inspire our city to start working toward the 60% of social housing that Vienna has.
Thank you, Councillor Swanson. Councillor Kirby-Yung, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I will be brief and just say I really appreciate this project. I hope we see more coming forward like this with respect to social housing, and with the similar philosophy that More Than a Roof has exemplified here around really building, not providing security of tenure, the sustainability principles in this passive house project, the diversity in terms of accommodating people of different family situations with 46% family units, but also the intentional creation of a mixed and diverse community, trying to be reflective of what we see in neighborhoods generally as a whole, and setting up for success. So I really appreciate, just similar to my colleagues, the care, thought, and design that has gone into this one. And particularly around the courtyard component, that you're not just providing a home, but you're trying to create a sense of community and connection, and design certainly facilitates and enables that. So I'm very happy to support it. I hope that we see more that are driven by a similar philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hardwick.
Thank you. I really looked at 3 different considerations in evaluating this, and I did want to say to staff and the proponent that I thought that the presentation was very good. The first part is the built form, and the adjacency to the SkyTrain is an obvious consideration. I listened carefully to the concerns of the community around this because of proximity and noise and air conditioning, etc. And I was concerned that the courtyard would act like a funnel, almost in a cavernous way, but I'm actually persuaded by what I've seen and heard, and I went back to that Appendix B and looking at the dimensions, and 18 to 40 feet along that courtyard on an east-west access is actually pretty good. The 5, 6, 7 stories, again, it's an incremental increase as opposed to an exponential, meaning doubling or tripling the heights. So I think it can be accommodated on that basis. So that's the built form part. The composition of residents, again, I understood the concern of the market rental component, and I'm persuaded on cross-examination that that it does pencil out. The business model does seem sound to me, and so nothing wrong there. And then the final piece is the public piece, and the concern that I did hear from the Cedar Cottage community that they weren't being heard, and this is something that we hear persistently. And this also tied back to the obvious emotional concerns of the existing garden and the folks that have been managing that community garden, and really desperately trying to find a place to relocate. On measure between those three things, there's pros and cons. Overall, in evaluating, I think it skews to the positive in this case. So I do hope that the members of the public and of the garden are persuaded that they're not going to be forgotten when this passes, as it will. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't see anybody else in the queue, so we'll call a vote on this one, and we'll make this one a recorded vote, clerks. Councilor Carr, there we go. That was unanimous. Thank you so much, council and speakers and proponents and staff. Thank you so much for that work. Now I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn this.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Dominato.
Thank you, Councilor Dominato. All in favor of adjourning, can say yay.
Yay.
Any opposed? There we go. Thank you so much, council. We will see you back here on October 25th. I think that's the next public hearing. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again, clerks. Have a good night.
Staff.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
clerks. Thanks, everyone.